YouTube, what is going on? We are inside the Hyundai Kona N and we are doing our MPG test. And if you guys are new to the channel, effectively we drive a car at 75 miles per hour on our highway loop, which is right around 140, 130-ish miles. Keep the car in normal, do 75, keep the AC on, because we're not trying to simulate what the best MPG this car can get. We're trying to simulate what the realistic MPG that you'll get. So let's see how this 2022 Hyundai Kona N does on our highway loop. First stop, the gas station. All right, we are heading on the highway to start our highway MPG test. Before we get there, we've done about 1.4 miles of just around town driving. Let me just break down the rules and how I'm gonna be driving on this trip. We got our climate set to 70 with the second auto setting on. So this thing can't fully rip, but it's also not, taken back for efficiency purposes. We're keeping this car in normal mode. So that's why the tach here looks white and not green. If this tach looked green, then this test is eco, and I don't think that's representative of what the majority of people that own these are gonna be driving them like. Last but not least, I'm going to be driving at around 75 to 80 miles an hour because while that is slightly over the speed limit, it is representative of what most people do on the highway. So that is the basis for our test. Over the course of this test, I'm also going to be touching on how this car is to drive on the highway, just because it's important to understand. I mean, we're going to be logging almost 200 miles here behind the wheel, so we can pretty easily talk about how it is in this environment. So without further ado, I'm gonna leave you guys to a time lapse so you're not with me along the way, and I'll comment every now and again with updates. All right, we are about 15 miles into the drive. We are seeing 27.7 MPG so far. Not bad out of the little Hyundai Kona N. We are on our next big piece of highway, but we've already noticed a couple of things that you guys should know about this Kona N on the highway. While it does have lane keep assist, which does help you maintain the sort of lane, it isn't as good as a, Tesla autopilot or something like that. Now, I know those cars are a lot more expensive, but it is something to note that this will sort of ping pong you in between lanes. It won't keep you firmly in the center like modern Hyundai things like the Ioniq 5 or something like that. In addition, this suspension, man, it is just bumpy, okay? Small expansion joints, little potholes, not even deep ones. You feel everything in this car. You really, really do. And that's not the end of the world, because overall the ride is okay, but it's important to note. All right, we are hopping off the highway after the first half of the highway MPG test. We've done at this point 54.6 miles, and we are averaging, per the computer, 28.4 MPG. Not bad from the little performance Hyundai. I mean, the good thing about this 8-speed DCT is even at speed, you're cruising at a relatively low RPM. I mean, we were regularly seeing around 2,000, so like 1,800 to 2,200 RPM on the highway, so pretty decent overall. We're 55 minutes into this drive. We're making one stop, and then we're just hopping back in the car and turning around and going right back to that gas station. So stay tuned. Things are going well so far. 29 MPG. It's not Civic Si good, but for something that's a lot more fun to drive, it's pretty decent. All right, we are starting our journey back. It was right around 60 miles on the way. It should be right around 60 miles going back. Can we maintain that 28, 29 MPG number? And then how far off is Hyundai's system from actual reality? In other tests, we've been 4 or 5 MPG off what the car reads versus the actual number. So it'll be interesting to see where Hyundai lies on that spectrum. Are they closer to reality, or are they even further off? Hopefully it's pretty spot on, because 28, 29 on the highway makes sense, especially when you look at the EPA number of being right in that wheelhouse. So another 60 miles to put in the books. Let's get it on.
So one of the unique things about doing this test and driving this car over 100 miles is you really get to understand how this car compares to its competition as a commuter. And the Hyundai Kona N, while being remarkably isolated, does lack in a couple capacities versus cars like the Civic Si and like the GTI. Well, for one, the MPG, if we trust this readout of 29 as 1-to-1, which we'll get to that later as to what that actual number is almost 10 MPG behind the Civic Si. The Civic Si gets an MPG rating of 37 on the highway and the GTI 34, so it is severely lacking against two of its biggest competitors. Now, the second thing is the overall comfort. While the sound system and seats are comfortable and adequate, the suspension is incredibly bouncy, and I know I sound like a broken record because I've brought this up a couple times, but the fact of the matter is, the reason why things like that camera falling happen is because of how this car handles expansion joints. I'm confident that in other vehicles that occupy this segment, which by the way is the WRX, the GTI, and the Civic Si, if I was to conduct the exact same test with the camera in the exact same place, it would remain upright because the suspension in those cars, while in some of them it isn't adaptive like it is here in the Kona, is more compliant. That said, the experience is still fun. The engine note is solid, the transmission works wonderfully, and because this is an 8-speed, your engine is actually spinning quite low as you get to that highway speed. You're going 75, 80 miles an hour, and you're still right in that 2,000 RPM benchmark, which is solid and not true for the wide variety of vehicles that operate in this segment. Looking at our overall trip details, we did 67 miles on the way there, and on the way back we did 65. In both cases, the readout said 29.4. After adding in 4.776 gallons, we do some quick math and we get an actual rating of 27.9, which is about 1.5 miles to the gallon different than reported and a lot lower than the competition. What do you guys think about the Kona N?